All right, so in my folder, I have found my tracing paper, and I'm also going to use a little bit of tape. It's not required. I personally find it very helpful, and you only need 2 small pieces of tape like this. That's really all you need. You don't need a lot, okay? So the next step is to take this tracing paper, put it so that it covers the entire design, and you should very clearly be able to see the design through it. Okay, so I like having the tape. I'm putting it on my skin first so that it doesn't stick too much. I don't want it to rip the paper when I peel it off. So this way it's sort of peeling off some of the oils on my skin, and it won't be as sticky. You can also put it like on your shirt or something like that. It'll pick up a little bit of the lint so that it doesn't rip your paper. Okay, that way it doesn't move around and I won't make any mistakes. All right, let's start tracing. So first, I'm going to actually trace the triangle. And I'm gonna use a ruler. I want this to be as neat as I can make it. So I will do all my straight lines with the ruler. So start with the triangle. Get it as accurately as you can so that when you trace this, it will fit perfectly. Okay, and now I'm going to trace the straight lines inside the design with a ruler. Okay. And since I already have my ruler out, I'll finish tracing anything else that's straight with the ruler. Okay, trace the rest of the design. Okay, so once you have it neatly traced, here's basically what's going to happen. The graphite that's on this tracing paper is going to transfer onto the next triangle. So watch what I'm going to do. Taking my paper, and I'm going to flip it over onto the next triangle so that there's a mirror image. See that? And then they match up perfectly. So the part that I drew on is on this side. So by flipping it over, that graphite is going to imprint onto the piece of paper. So now I'm going to lay this down, and you can either just hold it very, very sturdy with your hands, or you can, if you have tape, you can use that tape. Maybe I'll use a little bit more tape so I don't have to keep peeling it on and off. That might make it a little bit easier for me. Just really tiny pieces, putting it on my skin again so it's not so sticky. If you don't have tape, you can just hold it down, but I find the tape very helpful. So I'm paying attention that the lines of the triangle line up perfectly and that the points of my design, they match up exactly so that every time I transfer, it'll look correct. So I'm going to put my tape on both sides. Okay, like that, so it doesn't move around. And I'm going to retrace. You have to be careful to be like exactly on top of your original pencil line. If you're not, it won't transfer. Okay, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Let me first finish most of it, and I will purposely make a mistake at the end so I can show you. So watch, if I hold this up a little bit, see how it's transferring? So the graphite that was on this side is imprinting on the paper. Now watch, if I'm tracing and I'm going too fast and I kind of accidentally do this where it's not, I'll hold it up closer so you guys can see, where the lines are not directly on top of each other like that, then it won't transfer. See that? So this line here, this line right here, it didn't transfer because I didn't put it directly on top of the original line. So you have to be very, very neat and stay perfectly on the original outline for this to work. Okay, now I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna erase that because it's gonna distract me. Okay, and I'm gonna do it the right way. Right on top of the original. I'm gonna speed up the video a little bit. So you guys don't have to watch me trace the whole thing. Gently peel it off, and you should have a really nice transfer. So after you've done that one, you do the same thing again. You take your paper, and then you flip it. So the graphite that's on this side, flip it, will now transfer onto the next triangle, and so on and so forth. And you should have a really, really lovely design by the end. Okay, here's my finished design. That turned out even better than I had expected. So from a simple drawing like this with just a few curves and a few straight lines, I have come up with a really, really elaborate radially symmetric design, okay? So the next step after this would be coloring, but I just want to show you some examples of what different types of designs would look like. So for example, this one here, a little similar. You can see I definitely like repeating these curves over and over again. So this design had some straight lines in the background, lots of curves, variety. You have big shapes in the background, small shapes, medium shapes, and I quite liked that one. So I drew it on my paper, and this is the tracing paper that I used. And that was the design back here. Now I chose to do a really warm, high contrast coloring scheme here. I did this one. This is not a student example, and I quite like shading a lot, so that you can see why that ribbon worksheet was really important. And I will go over how I did this in another lesson, but for right now, I just want to show you examples of what these types of different designs would look like on the final paper. So that's another design, and I have this one, which ended up looking like this one, and then I did some shading there as well. So you can see how I definitely have a tendency to go for stars and flowers in the background. Yours does not have to be that way. Here's one that's a little bit different. This one is really, really elaborate, really, really detailed. So I would definitely not go more than this detail. If you have way too many really small shapes, you're gonna have a really hard time tracing it over and over and over again. You don't overdo it, okay? So this is the absolute maximum amount of details I would let you include. You still have the geometric shapes, the curvy shapes. You still have variety with bigger shapes and smaller and medium shapes. And I made this one kind of strategically to look like jewelry. So you can see after I traced this over and over again, it ended up looking like this. So these half almond shapes turned into these sort of gemstone looking shapes. This half circle ended up looking like a full circle once I traced it. This one I included a little bit of a Sharpie outline, not everywhere, but in some areas. So this one's super, super elaborate. I do not expect you to do this much detail. But I would say the minimum that you can do is something like this, which is totally fine. This actually ended up looking like a really nice project as well, and I'll show it to you on the other side. I still have my curved lines. I have one geometric line back here, and then I added some circles and a semicircle for variety because I have the larger open shapes, and then I needed something that's a little bit smaller for variety. So this design repeated over and over again looked like this, which I'm very, very happy with, and actually started shading it here as well. Okay, so you don't have to do too many designs. It'll still look good even with very minimal details. Okay, so step 1, figure out what you want on here if you want to practice a little bit. Step 2 is just draw in one triangle and then trace, 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 trace. Good luck.